Drop the ball now.
All right, and just like that, we are back. Hey, guys, thanks for tuning in to This Pink Cloud. We are a show on recovery, all forms of recovery, I would say, multiple pathways, maybe even. But I am DJ Kelly Reverb. Sitting in with me to my left is Mr. Chad Lamont, running the boards.
There we go.
Yeah.
I said do Dusty first, but that's totally cool.
You didn't say do Dusty.
I did. I literally did. It's okay.
Did he say do Dusty? Yeah, see, he said
whatever
do everybody.
You want to do.
That's
See, there we go. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie. We just pulled out the challenge flag, and you lost, Chad.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, sitting to my right, my good friend. It's been a while, dude.
A long time.
Yeah, but LPC, LCDC, and I usually make up a bunch of stuff, but I'll be nice today because we know your mom's watching. But the Vanilla Viking himself, the King of the North. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dusty Burrows.
I love that. That music has me so fired up right now.
That
I missed it.
And all the bangs.
All those.
All the energy drinks.
All the magnesium.
Yeah, dude, Dusty is high on magnesium today. That is hilarious, dude, that your chiropractor gave you baggies of magnesium.
Yeah, you know.
That doesn't look sketchy at all,
Not
dude.
at all.
Yeah.
So just pray I don't get pulled over on the way home.
Yeah, right. Well, as long as it's on the way home, dude, then, you have people out there that'll take care of you.
People out there. You know a good attorney, don't you?
I do, actually. Yeah, that was almost a good pitch throw to our sponsor.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, but excited to have these young ladies in the house. This young lady on my left, Lizzie Butler, is actually the founder and CEO and all those alphabet letters that you want to put behind an owner of a sober living recovery place called silverliningsrecovery.org. Correct?
Correct.
Did I get all that?
You did, yeah. But I get to do all of the fun stuff for it.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice.
me.
And I love it because we actually have your mom in the building, which is so cool because we never really get to do this on the show. We never really get to have the perspective of the person that put up with your shit.
Oh, she put up with a lot of it. Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm also the co-founder.
Oh, okay, cool. There we go.
And I'm on the board of directors.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Chad, you board of directors? No.
Yeah, I just...
Okay,
yeah.
did it. You got it all.
We got it.
Hey, but so normally what we do is we just have you kind of tell your story and then how you got to where your organization is and, the fun stuff your organization does. But before that, tell us about the car wreck that was happening prior to.
So it was kind of one of those multiple accident kind of car wrecks.
It was a multiple car pile up.
Yeah. No, I've been pretty problematic for her since I was a young age.
Okay.
Substance abuse started in high school. So I've been sober since May 23rd, 2017.
Okay.
So been on the recovery journey for a little while. So one thing about my story that I always like to tell people is that, because they talk about why people start using. Why is it that they form substance abuse issues, stuff like that. I didn't have any my parents got divorced when I was young. There was some fights in the house with my mom. My stepdad wasn't the best guy. But I didn't have any major. I had all the little traumas, not a lot of big traumas.
Right, the small T's.
Yeah, they call them the little T's and the big T's.
Right.
Yeah, so I had some of those, and some of it I feel like is I came from because there were some of those little T's, right? Like I just growing up didn't basically just didn't learn to adapt. I didn't learn the best coping skills. I acted out. I started self-harm at an early age because I couldn't pinpoint what it was.
Well, now that's interesting because I actually have a family member that was doing self-harm as well. So, I mean, and that's a huge factor. Why? I mean, why? I always like to ask people, the reason behind that with the self-harm.
Yeah, so mine, there was self-harm. My first suicide attempt, I believe I was in 8th grade. I was on Prozac by the time I was in 8th grade. Some of it was, so anytime I would self-harm, it was like those brief moments of where all of the chaos in my head and internally stopped for a second. And it was like I just didn't, there was so much between, I had anxiety, I had just internal chaos. And the thing is like from those young ages, it's like you don't know how to identify the feeling. You don't know how to identify what's wrong. You don't know. At that time, I didn't even know that what I was experiencing wasn't, for better lack of terms, normal.
Right. And
it's like,
Mom, did you know this was going on the whole time? I mean, obviously maybe, but was she hiding it as well?
She did a good job of hiding it. And what I always say is, sometimes it's hard to tell a problem from just normal preteen angst.
Sure.
Right.
I get it.
And she's naturally a little feisty. And so, it was sometimes just hard to know. And when counseling was suggested, that was probably more when she, 8th, 9th grade. I don't know. Anyway, the older she got, the less receptive she was.
I gotcha.
To it because they didn't understand. She didn't want them telling her what to do.
Well, of course. Who does?
And by,
right. Yeah.
And by that time, I had decided that how I was going to go about it was I was just, and it's like, I don't think I ever made a conscious decision that what I was doing was self-medicating. That's just kind of what happened. It was never like I specifically turned to substances to serve that purpose. It was kind of like they were just introduced to me. I noticed that they did something for me that I hadn't been able to find anything else that worked like that for me. So I just ran with it, you know, and like, you don't know. And then when you're at that point, you don't really want to talk about it to your family because I think that combined with the normal preteen angst.
Well, and your mom is uncool at that point.
Well,
your parents are way uncool.
Well, that's the other thing is I have no genetic factors for substance abuse. It doesn't run, neither my parents, nowhere in my family. So it just more really emphasized that whole, you don't understand, you don't get it, you've never been through this. Like neither one of them, even compared to now, as of now, they don't have tattoos. They've never been to jail. I don't even know if they have speeding tickets.
Right.
And so my experience.
So they have absolutely zero street cred.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it was just, and I've really taken a look at some of this because I am a believer that, what happens to us in childhood and early teen years forms us as an adult and that all that stuff. And so I've taken a look at that. And I think it's just there was never a conscious knowing that I never thought, I don't always feel emotionally safe or, I don't always, there was never that thought process. It was just how I had been functioning for a while. I didn't know how to, I didn't know how to identify anything. And even after I got sober, I had a hard time being able to identify which feeling was which and why did it's because I started at a young age of not know, you don't know that you need to communicate those things.
Sure. Yeah.
It's never talked about any of that stuff. So I never knew that any of the stuff I was feeling, like I said, either wasn't normal or needed to be talked about or I should tell anybody about. And by the time probably I got old enough to realize it, the self-medication and the numbing had already come into play.
Right.
So.
I think maybe they need to start looking at the school schedule and in 7th, 8th grade, they start just having second period is psychiatry where I go and see my therapist,
Coping skills 101.
Coping skills 101. Right. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it's I don't think you're ever really specifically taught them unless you grow up in a household of someone who's a therapist or you've had to go to therapy at a young age or it's that's never something that's ever as a kid or a preteen you're ever known that hey, life's gonna get a lot harder when you get older and you're gonna need these things. I don't think that's a norm to be established or talked about.
Oh no, not at all. Yeah.
Now that I'm going to school to be a therapist, my kid is screwed.
Right.
He just turned 12 and so he definitely doesn't want to, because there's some stuff from my past that he's carrying and
mom knows I'm hiding bullshit.
There's that, but I see things and I'm trying to get him to talk about it and I'm trying all that stuff and he's just not ready for it. But so when he gets older he's going to be
my daughter says, don't talk to me in your counselor voice, Dad. I'm just talking.
Yeah, no, definitely in my terminology, you can definitely tell is like from an educated level, and it's my how I deliver it, all that stuff. Yeah, so when he starts trying to pull some stuff when he gets older, he's going to be in for it.
Nice. Well, so I mean, let's talk about where it happened for you, like as far as where you decided to make a change. Like, what was occurring? Did you have like one specific instance where you go, oh, this is just not right, or was it all little T's?
So later in life, there was definitely some big T's that happened. Okay. And some of that was due to the fact that I chose to be in an environment where substance abuse was the norm. I got involved in some stuff, like the best way to summarize it is to some extent some organized crime.
I dabbled in organized crime.
Yeah, I mean, just for the sake of trying to describe all of the different entities that were in there.
Well, sure.
There was a lot of it. Another thing.
What was the craziest? You would ask me that, wouldn't you?
Well, it depends on what your definition of the craziest was.
Well, your definition. What do you think? Just one.
The time that, like, I'll say the time that one of the many instances that I still have flashbacks from is when there was some people I was around who ran prostitutes, and there was a time that I got a call to try to come save one who was overdosing, and that was the first death rattle I ever heard.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fun.
That's one that I get some reoccurrences from. And then there's like some other little ones. I remember the exact time where I was that I had accepted the doom and death of a drug addict life. Mm-hmm. And that I was just going to live like that the rest of my life. Because the thing is like the people I was around, there was no going to treatment. Mm-hmm. There was no detox. There was no anything. Like, you either went to prison or you died in it. Like,
right.
That was it. So it's not like I ever really had much hope or solution. And I, like, one thing too I like to talk to people about is like, so my mom and I have not always gotten along.
Surprise.
Well, when I was in high school, we fought quite a bit to the point to where I decided I was going to graduate a year early and move out at 17. Okay. Because my dad always says that we are exactly alike where it hurts and we're completely different where it hurts. So we fought quite a bit just from being different people, and I was sneaking out and doing, my deal. And so I moved out at 17, and her and I didn't talk to each other for a few years after that. So I always like to tell people that it's like even the damages that are done in the past, like basically once I got sober and I took a look at myself and I did the inventory and all that stuff and realized that not everything was her fault like I used to tell myself that it was. And I used to hold on to stuff that she did from when I was like 12 and I'm like in my 20s, and my dad's like, why can you not just let that go? And I'm like, I don't know, but I can't.
Yeah.
So it's like I had to work through some stuff like that, and
Well, that's an important part. I mean, working actually through that PTSD and, being able to process it and let it go and just go, hey, there's nothing I can do, man. So the only thing I can do is acknowledge it and then move on, or deal with it.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting that we now run a business together, basically.
I love it. But so you were, okay, so like, let's paint the picture. So 8th, 9th grade, you start dabbling, and then it gets more serious as high school's going on, and then you're at the point where, I want to move out early and...
Oh, yeah, I thought I knew everything.
And start my own enterprise.
Well, and she had outgrown the little town that we lived in.
What town was that?
Oh, can we say that?
Yeah, you can say the town.
It was Gunner, Texas.
Texas.
Like, you go north of Prosper, you hit Salina, you go north of there, you run into Gunner. And I was the one that, like...
I think I've heard of it on the weather report.
Maybe. That's like, when I went to high school, their population was less than 3,000 people. And
wow.
I was the one that anytime there was any type of petty crime that happened in that town, I was the first stop.
They went to you.
I was the first stop, yeah.
And I worked at the bank there in town. Oh. So everyone knew me and her, and then so that was an interesting.
Did you know like the local deputy first base's name, like
the chief of police, sure, and I'm still friends with the mayor. So,
nice.
But yeah, so that was a little awkward because here's a lady you're trusting with your money. Oh,
by the way, yeah.
But I guess I didn't realize that she was like the first stop, because there were certainly plenty of other kids.
Oh yeah, I wasn't like the kingpin of the town, but I was just usually a good first stop for them.
You were not the Don. You were like the right hand, or
it was just they figured that if it wasn't me, I probably knew who it was.
Yeah, exactly,
because it was a friend of mine.
Sure,
gotcha. But and people would say, hey, we heard Lizzie was at this party, or we heard it, and I'd ask her, because I didn't have experience with this, and she assured me that was incorrect, and there was a reason they were saying these false truths about it.
Oh, yeah.
I learned to master giving excuses that honestly probably didn't make a lot of sense, but you weren't going to be able to prove it invalid. Like those types of, like, I would maneuver my responses or whatever to, like, maybe not really be super logical.
Maybe I could believe that.
Yeah.
Actually, as a parent, you're like,
But I could find ways
Right.
to explain it that there wasn't going to be any vouching she could do anywhere else to prove it one way or another. So
Sure.
I got really good at those.
Well,
Nice.
you're very well spoken, so it's those kind of charismatic people that can make other people believe basically anything.
believe their bullshit.
Well,
Right.
and as a parent too, I'll say, I wanted it to not be true.
Oh,
right?
yeah, of course.
So-
There's that part, too. Yeah.
Yeah, Stephanie, how were you coping with all this? Since, she already said that you didn't drink or do drugs, had that history. So as a parent going through all this mess, how were you coping with it?
Well, as best I could, and that's what I said. I really didn't know much about or anything about addiction. I always thought drug addicts came from bad families,
Oh, yeah.
whatever bad family.
Sure.
I'm good in parentheses there, bad family, and I just knew it wasn't going to be us because and then all of a sudden I have a daughter who's a drug addict, and I thought, well, wait, how has this happened? Because we aren't that kind of family, right? And so it was very humbling too. So I really, as a parent, who do we turn to, right? I don't
Yeah.
want to tell people what's going on. And if I did know sympathetic people, they have their own lives. So it was really hard. I was a single mom, and it was difficult. And when she talks about graduating early, that's what I always said. I said, yeah, no, we didn't get along, and I said, so if she graduates from high school and we're both still alive and neither of us have gone to jail, it's going to be a miracle. And I said, thank God she graduated a year early, because I'm not sure we were going to get there.
Oh, wow.
So it was tough. She didn't, she was a little opposed to rules, and
I was
the mom
terrible.
and
Just say it. I was terrible.
It's okay.
What's interesting to me
Yeah.
that you were out, causing a ruckus, but also graduating early.
Oh, I had a
Yes,
job.
yeah.
I worked 2 jobs my junior year. I paid because you have to get approval because they lose money if you're not there. So I had to do all of that, and I had to do some summer school classes, and because that's and I think that came into play later with the environments I ended up in. It's even when I'm not sober, I can still grind it out pretty
it's like
well.
a
Right.
double life. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I got awards in school. I got
did.
all that.
She
stuff.
was a cheerleader.
Nice.
She was in the choir.
Nice. Look at her.
I know, right?
Okay, we'll get cheerleader pictures and put them in and post.
Oh, I have one that I show people, and they always find it real funny. But from your question about the basically instances that led to me getting sober, because it was my years of using, I got sober at 25. My years of using escalated and it was almost by the types of drugs that changed, the types of environment that changed, the types of people that it changed, the types, and especially when I started graduating into the little bit heavier substances.
Well, what was the graduation? You started off probably just alcohol, weed, and then
So it was, my initial start was weed, and then hydrocodone, and back when Loratabs were still around. Xanax was a constant for me the whole time, because the thing was throughout, especially from my experiences earlier on with the internal chaos and with the self-harm stuff and all of that, I thought my main issues was mental health stuff. I thought it was just an issue with the way my brain worked, with coping and whatever else. And so that was kind of, I would, but what would happen is I would go to doctors about it, psychiatrists, and I would convince them that they needed to prescribe me both Xanax and Adderall.
right.
And I'm
love it.
and I'm working restaurant jobs where you're going out drinking every night and also doing cocaine. And so that was a
Sure.
time period of where I knew I had a lot of fun, but I don't remember a whole lot of it, kind of thing.
Right.
Because, with someone with a substance abuse problem, it's always best when I can get that substance with my name on the pill bottle. Because then probation, cops, parents, nobody can tell you you're not supposed to
Right.
take it.
Yeah.
But I didn't take it like I was supposed to. So it, there was a lot of that. And so for a while, I thought that was my problem. But then it's I graduated from, the weed, Xanax, pain pills into ecstasy, into cocaine, especially when I moved out and I moved up to Sherman. Grayson County is not the cleanest area as far as drugs.
The king of the north will vouch for that.
Yeah, so I moved up there and I started getting into cocaine and ecstasy and all of that stuff. I had a problem with that on and off, like especially ecstasy for, I don't know how I used to do it, but I would take so much and stay up all night, go to work the next day and do it again. Like looking back, I'm like, no wonder my body's always tired now.
Right.
The service industry, you can do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Well, you just drink your way out of it. Is what I did.
Yeah, that's what. Well, usually I would have weed and Xanax.
Yeah,
is
there you
because it would level me out.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I wasn't.
It would right the ship.
Yeah, and
That's what I say.
I always had issues with keeping jobs because I would get to a point to where I would get too fucked up and decide that I just shouldn't need that job anymore and just wouldn't go.
Right.
Or I could tell I was about to get in trouble at work, so I just would stop showing up.
Sure.
And in service industry, again, you can do that.
I'm about to get fired, so I'm just not going to show.
Yeah, because I would rather say I quit than I got fired.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. And then
Living life on my terms.
And well, no, and the thing is at that point in your life, you really don't have any accountability. Is the important thing, because I noticed that in a family member of mine's life as well. Is they don't, they have zero accountability. Why do you want to change?
Well, and the thing is so I have a son who's now 12. So I had him right before I turned 19. So I still, if you want to say I had him as some level of like why I wanted to change. But the thing is like there was just, because I still was working, I still kept a roof over my head. I still did what I needed to with him. I just never identified it as a problem because at that point I was still for the most part functioning.
Yep.
And so, but then I ran into catching criminal charges and CPS getting involved and some other things. But even at that time, like the weird thing is for a good chunk of my life, it blew my mind how there were some people out there who didn't have criminal charges.
Right.
I'm like, how are there people out there who have followed every, like,
what am I doing wrong?
like, it's like my perception of like reality, adulthood, this world was just not accurate. And I think it's because I decided at such a young age, I was going to completely detach from any parental supervision, any parental suggestion. At 16, 17 years old, I thought I knew everything and I ran with that. So like at what point did I ever really give myself a chance to know what normal functioning adulthood looked like?
Right. And your mom's got to be pulling her hair out at the whole time.
Sure. Detach from parental.
No,
whatever.
like
that's such a kind way to say.
No, I mean like
she was so
See,
defiant.
she's still good at it. No, she's still
mental,
good at it, Mom.
like that mental piece of like just my decision to do that.
I know.
Not reality, but just I had made that decision. But so it's. My son was a main motivating factor around the time that I did get sober. But like, because again, like I said, the people I was around, they didn't go to detox, they didn't go to treatment, they didn't, there was no out. And then, but because of some of the actions that I did, like one time, so once I got into graduated more towards the GHB meth heroin ballpark,
Right.
that really got a hold of me to the point to where I didn't want that accountability anymore. I didn't want anybody trying to tell me how often or how high I could get, what responsibilities I had to fulfill, anything like that.
Right. Now, so at that time, were you, was it a planned pregnancy that you, no. Okay. So, and then were you actively using, and then your son, you got pregnant, and then you were like, okay, something's got to change, or how did that work?
So, as far as when I was pregnant, I could weirdly like sometimes stop using substances when I knew there was an end date.
Okay,
So while I was pregnant, I stopped.
A
but
little
like
9-month goal,
Every plan was made for the day I came home from the hospital, and especially because after you have a baby, they prescribe you pain pills.
Oh yeah.
So there's that. And me and his dad actually split when he was about 3 months old.
Okay.
Because it was the type that I got pregnant very quickly, and that relationship would not have lasted as long as it did if it hadn't been for so much of it that I was pregnant.
Right.
Because we met, because we did the same drugs with the same people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it even though like after CPS getting involved, and I was just wrapped up in a lot of delusion. And so even with CPS getting involved, stuff like that, I never really decided to make a change until, because like when I got into that GHB meth heroin world, I decided one day I just wasn't going to pick him back up from his dad, and I disappeared from him and my family and everyone for a long amount of time. Phone was shut off, email was shut off, like I was gone.
How long did you go MIA?
All around total, it was probably 9 or 10 months.
Oh, wow.
I resurfaced.
Holy crap. Where'd you go?
In that underground world that a lot of normal people don't know exists in Dallas, of selling drugs and running prostitutes. And
Chad knows it.
Oh yeah,
Chad,
I know it really well.
Chad used to live there.
It's called Northwest Highway.
Exactly, Northwest Highway. Yes, the gated hotel and the Motel 6s and the Royal Inn. Yes.
Well, let's just say any hotel that says super before like a single or double digit number is really not that super. You know what I mean?
Also, a lot of the hotels off of Addison off Beltline
Oh,
over
yeah.
in there.
Are we we're giving all the shady places like a Yelp review here?
Well, I mean, because let me rephrase what I said. The normal functioning members of society doesn't know it exists.
Right.
But there's a lot, and it was like, and at that time, I'm not sleeping for 3 weeks at a time. I'm not eating for 3 weeks at a time. So kick in even more delusion about reality and like the hopelessness. And two, so then the fact that I didn't go pick him back up from his dad, all that shame and guilt wrapped up in there from knowing the harm I'm causing to my parents and to everybody else, them not knowing where I am, all of that stuff, that reinforced me continuing to use because I didn't want to have to feel
Mom,
any of
at
that.
this time when she's MIA for 9 months, you've got to be scared out of your mind, right?
Thank you for asking.
Let's hear
I was
it.
going to say, so her son, I don't know if she said this or not, but he was in kindergarten, right? And so it was October, and she and I were already kind of at odds. Because there'd be periods where it'd be all right, and we were a little bit at odds at the time. And so week on, week off with the child, and so she just didn't show up one time back up to pick him up from his dad where they met, and he's calling her dad, me going, hey, she's just running late, what's happening here? And we're like, what do you mean she didn't pick him up? Because we didn't know. And she was living with her dad at the time. And so anyway, we didn't know. So here we don't know if something's happened to her or whatever. So I think, I don't know, sometime after that, her dad did hear from her. So we at least knew she was alive. But he, in fact, had looked on the toll tag. Because he called, he couldn't report the car stolen. It was in his name, but he'd given her permission to use it, so you couldn't. I kept saying, call the repo guy. He doesn't care. He will pick it up $350, and you got the car back. And she's not so smart anymore, is she?
Right.
But he said, no, I hate the idea of her being out on the street with no way to get around. So you can see we had two different philosophies
I was gonna say,
on how we
least
should address it.
You could actually tell that she was still alive by the toll tag.
Right.
ding.
Yeah, he would watch to see what area.
He registered that, and he said, or at least we hope it's Lizzie driving the car.
True.
We don't know. And so really, you lived your life thinking perhaps the next phone call you got was going to be the police saying,
The morgue,
we found your daughter dead, and she's been there a week, but none of the other addicts would call.
Right.
And so that's how it felt. It was horrible.
Wow, man.
It was horrible.
That's gotta be
she'd
heavy.
show up, and for a day or two, she'd contact
Let
her
me
dad.
clarify that. Usually what would happen is I got arrested. Or I was stranded somewhere.
Car
and
was
so,
impounded.
Yeah, something would happen that I could not get myself out of. So then the phone call would to happen.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
bail me out of jail, come pick me up from here, get my car out of impound, anything like that. And, and then I, like she's saying, I would resurface for a day or two because usually I would just sleep and eat, and then once because I'd been awake
Maybe
for so long.
wash your clothes.
Yeah, and then I was gone again.
Wow.
Yeah, at her dad's.
Did you find that after a while it just gets so dark and becomes almost comfortable?
Yeah, I was, and I had also fallen in love just as much with that darkness, with that lifestyle. I had worked, here's the thing, I worked so hard to get as miserable as I got. Because I'm a female, and the people I was around, it was mostly guys. It's, so I also had to learn to shut off all emotions in me. I had to learn, like, a lot of things. That's what I'm saying. I worked really hard because I was also proud of my ranking and all that delusional shit and whatever, that drug addict ego. But it was like I almost had loved the feeling like, the Queen of the South kind of like thing. And it was like that tight. And so I had fallen, I when I got sober, I had to mourn that aspect and like come to terms with that aspect just as much, because that was like a pleasure. Like I had, and it's very twisted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so as far as, that's a great question that you ask us. And as far as just a parent goes, we eventually have to just pull back. We still miss them. We still love them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, man, you were just, it hurts all the time. And so that was what it was like for me, is I finally just had to just take a step
Did you
back.
find any way or try to maybe have somebody to talk to deal with this while it's going on, or any way to process it for you?
Well, so I was talking about my significant other. So he had a past where he was a functioning drug addict, is what we said, and he got clean on his own, and but he'd been clean and sober for, I guess, 25
He's
years.
he's what us in 12-step programs called a hard user.
Gotcha.
But anyway, he led a pretty wild lifestyle for about 10 years or more. So so he helped me understand. He'd be like, something's not right.
Right.
She's doing this. She's telling you that he was always pointing out. So it was, he said at one time that, he said, I always kind of thought maybe God had brought you and me together so that I could help Lizzie. And he said, I later realized he brought us together so I could help you.
Oh, wow.
So, but yeah, no, I didn't, because I didn't know. And so I try to be that for people now, moms who reach out to me and say, hey, this is going on with my child, and or at least a sounding board or a listening ear. I'm certainly not qualified to do anything, or like Lizzie says, I'm uniquely qualified, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
that's what I say. Kind of her role in it is I'm uniquely qualified with the drug addict themselves. She's uniquely qualified with the parent of them.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, because
For sure.
her story, is the, oh my gosh, she can get clean and sober. I can, because I'm not that bad.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, okay, so you're out disappearing for 9 to 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
And is there finally like one last arrest that
So there was.
changes?
I'm going to
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Because I talked about me, but here's her son, right? Her kindergarten son, who his mom, who he adores, just didn't show up. And he keeps saying, where's my mom? Where's my mom? And what can a 5-year-old understand, right? He doesn't.
Yeah.
And you just don't even know what to say to him, right? And so
what would you say?
Well, we said we don't know for a long time.
Well,
and
unfortunately, his dad told him that I was missing, and I don't think they thought at the time what that internally does to a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
That you just tell them their mom is missing, and that's what he knows for about the next 2 years.
Yeah, I didn't know if you would just go, oh, she's on vacation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, because he knew he wasn't going to her house anymore, and he missed her so much.
Right.
And he calls me Fifi, and he'd say, Fifi, he's kindergarten, right? Fifi, do you know where my mama is?
Oh.
I talk about, if you ever wonder what a knife to the heart feels like, that's what it feels like. And I would be like, no, baby, I don't. And he'd be like, Fifi, why are you crying? And I'm like, I'm not crying. My eyes are watering.
Right.
But that was the hard part, was for him, is he just didn't know. And then one time he said, on the whole missing thing, because what do you say? I mean, I'm sure whatever we said was wrong, but that was all we had. Was he wanted to one time ask me if we could make posters and put her picture on it and put them on telephone poles,
Like a
so
little
if
lost
anybody
dog,
could see, if anybody saw her, they could, he's trying to figure out how to get his mom back.
Sure.
So it was. I'm sorry, I wanted to tell that story
No,
too,
I think that's very important.
We had
Again, why
him
I'm
as
trying to
well.
get him into therapy.
Right.
there.
Understood.
Right.
Understood.
So,
Yeah.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, so to answer your question, that big moment. So last time I got arrested was, in Addison off Beltline in the tollway, in a hotel parking lot, middle of the day. So some of those people I had gotten involved with were people who were really good friends, I guess, with like the FBI.
You had to think about that.
Well, I was like, how do you word that correctly? So they were just really known with the FBI, and I guess they had been looking for him, and somebody spotted him somewhere, and so a call came in, and we pull into this hotel parking lot, and 4 cop cars come rolling in deep, right, lights on, everything. So obviously I go to jail that day. And it was one of those where it was a combination of a few things. So it was my first stint in Dallas County. I've been in Collin County, Denton County, Dallas County. Dallas County is by far the worst.
Now you're speaking my language.
But it was one of those that, because of like that darkness and all of that like I had been, because also all of that plus not sleeping plus like I'm 5'10" and I weighed 102 pounds. I had like nothing but bone. I was so the combination of also the sleep deprivation, what that did to my brain, plus a lot of meth use. At that point, I was just using meth to just keep going. There was no more getting high at that point. It was like meth maintenance. Right. And so I don't think I would have ever willingly left because I was so wrapped up in it all. I didn't know there was another way to do anything. So luckily, divine intervention of Carrollton City Police Department.
Very divine.
Yeah. And so I end up in Dallas County, and I'm there for a couple weeks, and it takes me a little while because I'm physically detoxing off heroin, mentally off meth and sleep deprivation. So it takes me a little bit to fully really realize where I was and that I wasn't going anywhere and all of that. So I call my dad. And another big thing that changed is my dad finally talked to somebody who said, stop getting her out. Because my dad always says he grew up in a household where you fix everything in-house.
Right.
You don't talk to other people about it, and like my mom said, it's like, who do you talk to? What do you say? So somebody finally said, identified him as the enabler.
And somebody besides me said that to him.
Okay.
Yeah,
Clarify that. I kept saying it. They didn't listen.
Because he finally talked to people about it.
Right.
And so somebody was like, stop saving her, stop bringing her home, stop. Because my dad's the type that he can figure out a solution to most things. He's always been financially well off. So he can, he can handle what he wants to. I was the one thing he could never figure out. And so he told me, he basically grounded me to Dallas County. And he said, the only way I'm getting you out is if you go to treatment. And at that point, I was like, just get me the fuck out of here.
Right. I'll do anything.
At least
right,
in treatment, they're going to have better food, real mattresses. I'm also not going to be drinking the same water that comes out of the toilet. Yeah. All that stuff. So I ended up in treatment, and he picked me up from jail. We had to go to Walmart to replace basically everything I owned.
Right.
And then I was in treatment the same day. And like at that point, during that few weeks in Dallas County, I looked around, and I had been removed a long enough time to be clear-minded enough to look around and be like, I don't want to be one of those women who knows how to sit and do time. This isn't what I wanted for myself when I was a little girl, all that kind of stuff. So at that point, I was kind of excited about treatment. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I didn't know, but I was excited for the opportunity to do something different.
For a possibility of a change. Right.
Yeah. And so I get there, and they were a 12-step facility. I get handed a big book and a step 1 packet, and I start reading that big book, and it was able to put things into words for me that I was never able to.
Right.
Like the cycle and the doctor's opinion.
It's amazing how the 1939 words still resonate
We are
today.
like men who have lost their legs. I read that. I said, "Oh, you got to be kidding me, dude."
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Chad's
They were like, "Have you read the
Chad's-
big book before?" I'm like, "Yeah, of
Chad's
course."
missing
And then
a
I
limb.
finally read it, and I come out of my room. They're like, "You read it, didn't you?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And see, in it talks about the resentment piece, and so identified why it was with stuff with my mom that I could never let go of. And I could just see that cycle so many times in my life, that physical allergy, the phenomenon of that whole thing. I was like, I was so fired up, because I was like, there's finally there's basically I learned there's other people like me. I learned that there's other,
right. Yeah. That's like a big epiphany that everybody always has. It's like, that's my story.
Yeah. It's just because for a long time, I just didn't know that there was a way out. Because like I said, there wasn't people I knew who got sober. There wasn't people I knew, and so the people who also worked there, who had used drugs like I had, who had been, not even just used drugs like I had. My biggest thing is they were internally as miserable as I was. Everybody's externals can look different, but that same internal, just doom, hopelessness, all of that I identified with. And I was like, well, if they, and so, it was a 30-day facility. Worked all 12 steps there. And then when I was in there, though, they asked me, they were like, you going to do sober living after this? And I looked at them and I was like, why the fuck would I go anywhere like here after this? No.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it, and, one thing that is kind of a double-edged sword that I have is I'm a pretty self-aware individual. So it's good, and it's also terrible sometimes. So I knew myself well enough to know if I don't go somewhere after here, what's going to happen is I'm going to go home. I know I'm a creature of habit. I like what's comfortable. I like what's familiar. All the wrong things. So where I went to treatment was a little bit outside of Waco. I don't think it's open anymore, but I decided to go to sober living in Austin because I knew I had to do. And my biggest thing is I think aftercare is almost more important than the inpatient, because you can teach somebody all of these things, but it's and baby deer with their legs, it's they don't really know how to implement it. Plus all of the all of the things you have to face that you severely damage. It's you're out of that bubble now.
Right.
So and when life creeps back up, you need somebody to be able to kind of hold you up.
Yeah, so they're I tell people, sober livers are kind of like bumper rails.
Yeah.
Because things happen. Also, you're learning to cope with emotions. You're also having to deal with
it's a
healthy way. It's a healthy environment to be in dealing.
Sober
with
living is like a walker.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And it's it's one of those things that I think. I completely forgot what
I was going to say that people, it's good to be in sober living because you surround yourself with people that are in maybe the same problem that you're having, or can at least relate, and the good thing about it is they can call you on your bullshit too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you learn to like hold others accountable while you're there too.
Mm-hmm.
And then
get to
because
implement
you
things.
point out
Yep.
behaviors in other people, and then you realize that you see them in yourself.
I can take your inventory. Great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Biologically, 30 days isn't a lot of time.
No.
you know?
No, it's not. Especially
I
with
think I was, last time I went to treatment, I think I was high for the first 2 weeks because I was on so many drugs going in. So really, what can I accomplish in 2 weeks?
Yeah, and it's they talk
the
about
aftercare piece. I think is far more important than the 30-day treatment.
and your brain chemicals are still trying to regulate how you think, and it's like because basically getting sober in whatever form you do it, it's essentially asking you to live life completely different than you have been for however long. And so it's like that, like time in a bubble where they're teaching you the things. It's like, okay, that's great and that's good, but when you leave here and you're having to actually deal with life on life's terms, and you have to go back into knowing how to be a functioning member of society again, and like I was in sober living with some women who had never even mopped before. It's like there's some real basic stuff, and like just that because I think all substance abuse users kind of also suffer sometimes from that failure to launch.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Failure to launch. Yeah, that's important. But before we get to, because I want to talk about your organization and what you do, real quick, we got to hit our advertisers. First advertiser is Lone Star Injury Attorneys, and that is, as for Max the Axe. There you go, shout out. If you go to thispinklawyer.com, it will route you to their actual website, which is Lone Star Injury Attorneys. They practice in Texas and California, and he will get the maximum results for you. And he's a good dude, right, Chad?
Max is a very good dude, super cool guy. He's kind of helping me out with some stuff right now, so
I like it.
And it's not even in his field. He went out of his way to.
Yeah, he's like finding me a entertainment lawyer as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so good dude. And also we've got NeuroGlow, and that's NeuroGlow.com, and they're actually in McKinney and Flower Mound. They are a ketamine infusion therapy. Shout out ketamine.
Shout out ketamine therapy.
Shout out NeuroGlow.
There you go. Dusty has actually been to NeuroGlow, right?
Yeah, I did all 6 sessions there, which is their protocol for ketamine infusion therapy. It was a big game changer for me, my mental health.
Right. Well, we're going to do an episode.
Highly recommend it.
We're going to do an episode on that. Yeah, for sure. But I mean, you would vouch for it as a LPC and LCDC,
Absolutely.
the benefits of it, right?
Some of the NeuroGlow clients actually come to me for therapy, so I get to hear firsthand accounts of how ketamine therapies changed their life through the process of therapy too. So it's pretty exciting.
Cool. Well, there you go. So NeuroGlow.com in Flower Mound and McKinney. So anyway, hit them up if you're looking for that treatment that might be, or if you're treatment resistant, I would say.
It's really good for addiction. It's really good for treatment-resistant depression as well.
There we go. All right, lovely. Now, so your organization, silverliningsrecovery.org. Mm-hmm. Tell us about it. Tell us what inspired you to do it, and tell us like what services you offer and all the good stuff.
Okay, so as far as the inspiration piece, so when I went to sober living in Austin, I saw the Austin recovery community is saturated. Like a lot of like good sober livings, good treatment centers, outpatient meetings. Like the recovery community is huge. It's insane down there. And so when I moved back up here, and I noticed that there's not as many structured, supportive, sober living environments for women. There's like a few of them, but it's like as far as the number of them, and two, when I was doing some discharge stuff for a facility that I worked for up here, I just saw that like there's not as many options. And so my mom and I had been talking about it for a little while about opening one, and then one day we were like, well, are we going to do it or not, kind of thing. And so we decided to do it. We opened it up, and so as far as, and we call it, so I always tell people this, the reason why we call it Silver Linings is because my mom likes to always tell people that basically I found a silver lining in some pretty bad situations. As far as like now wanting to try to help people because I made that decision like shortly after treatment. I was like, I'm going to use my experience to try to help people instead of sitting in that like constant morbid reflection, self-pity, just like living in that, like I'm going to
Well, you're uniquely qualified.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, So so that's kind of the reason for the name. We're also a 501c3 nonprofit.
Okay.
Reason why we do that is because we like to do fundraisers and stuff like that. So that way we have the option to, obviously we want to grow, but also so that way we have the opportunity, if needed, to sometimes offer scholarships, partial scholarships, stuff like that to women. Because like the thing is usually by the time people are walking into sober living, unless they have family support, they're usually not financially killing it.
Yep.
Right.
So.
Well, so y'all are a sober living facility for women, and then you offer. Do y'all do any kind of IOP, or do you have any kind of?
No, I'd rather not deal with insurance companies.
Right.
So we just work with. There's a few facilities that
you refer to.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it's either that or like therapy. I'm real big on like them continuing that, like working through stuff, any mental health things, stuff like that. So yeah, we have just for right now the one house in Plano. We've been open since July of 2021. So coming up on 2 years.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so as far as kind of like what we do, so we are strongly modeled around 12-step program, simply just because that's how I got sober. That's what I know, so that's just what I teach.
Sure.
And so, the thing that we also do that's a little different is, my mom's involvement. There's not many out there that have.
Right. Well, I know I love the mother-daughter aspect of it because, you can talk to the parents because the parent, it's the parents or the significant other that brings that person in half the time, and then you can relate to that part and go,
Absolutely.
This is going to be a good fit.
Yeah, or that we've also had a few women in the house that they relapsed or for some reason or another they had to leave, and so she's had like lunch or dinner with them and the moms and like talked them through because their daughter's using again and they're having all those same fears and whatever come up, and so she's able to be there to relate on what that's like.
Sure.
We actually have, like, because of what we do and how we operate, like, I think it's interesting, like, cool that we have people like family supporters, even though their loved one was asked to leave our house.
Right.
I think that's kind of cool. It helps tell me that we're doing something that we should, because we're also real big on family involvement, because I know that it's like you can be showing up one way in the house telling family something different, like that whole piece. But we're like, so I tell people, I'm like, we're structured and we have a good amount of accountability to us, but we're not to the like suffocating level. The best way to explain it is we just really hold their feet to the fire around like doing basic recovery 101 stuff. So going to meetings, meeting with their sponsor, meditation, being of service. After they've been there so long, we want them out doing H&Is and carrying the message, home groups, group conscience, like all of just the basic stuff that regardless of where you live, it's required of you to do if you want to have the same type of
Dusty
experience.
was also mentioned a little something about Matt earlier.
Yeah, I had a question and a comment. First of all, because you have this opioid use disorder history, and you mentioned that y'all were supportive of Matt Treatment and your organization. Tell us why that's important to you to be able to offer that and support that for people out there.
Yeah, so we do. It's a big case-by-case thing. Obviously, there's some details that I want to know, and like their medication-assisted treatment use, like why they're on it, how long they've been on it. And my big thing is how long do they want to be on it for? And I'm hoping that they're not just using it as their sole way of getting and staying sober. But the biggest reason why we are willing to work with that is because when it comes to people on whether it's Suboxone, Subutex, method, whatever it is, that there's not many structured and supportive sober living environments that will take them. So it's like the unfortunate thing is there are some, but a vast majority is like, no, you have to be on it for X amount of days. You can't be on it while you're here, whatever else. And my thing is I'm like, there's so many facilities these days who are putting them on MET and doctors who are telling them you have to be on it. So there's those first time treatment goers who are told you have to, so they're going to do it. Some people don't know what all's going on. And then there's other people who do have long-term opiate or opioid use disorders who need it. And so it's like if they don't, it's like what other options do they have then? It's like there's Oxford, which that's fine, but like for a lot of people, they need more structure and support initially.
Sure.
So it's like my thing is I'm like, I don't want to basically tell them no because you're on this, that you can't get the same type of supportive services that all of these other people can.
And like you mentioned Oxford House. Oxford House is kind of like, and it's not a bad thing. It's a kind of a crapshoot what house you get.
Yeah.
Whereas if they go to you, then they actually have like a structure and they know what they're getting.
Yeah, and I tell people when, like, because I get calls from a lot of people who have been to Oxford before and don't want to do it again because they have had a bad experience because it is ran like a democracy and there's no like regulating authority.
Or it's like one of the 12-step meetings that hey, this is full of like people that are not like me at all.
Yeah, I'd say that sometimes those are good steps for after they've been in environments like ours.
Right.
Like a step down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they don't have near as much accountability and rules and people holding their feet. It's kind of like a bunch of sober roommates living together who all just vote on stuff. So it's set up differently.
Sure, for sure. Well, and I know you do something fun. You were talking about fundraisers.
Yes. So our big thing that we do annually for our fundraising is we do a murder mystery dinner theater.
Okay.
So my mom has been in theater for how many years? Long time. Probably longer than I've been alive.
I've been in the theater a lifetime.
Yeah, so she's she's real involved in McKinney Repertoire Theater and stuff like that. And so she that's her area of
expertise.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So what we do is we do it once a year. Our next one is coming up. I believe it's May 6th. It's the first Saturday in May.
Okay.
And so what we do is we do it a little different. Some murder mystery dinners, they like pull people from the audience to be in it. Well, what we do different is we hold auditions ahead of time, and we have the auditions be for people in the recovery community.
Gotcha.
So like in our last one, we had, I think, 2 people with theater experience. All of the other ones were just in it just to be a part of and do something fun. And they loved it. They did great. They thrived.
It was live.
Chad was there.
It was live.
Yeah,
that's one of the great instances of using the word live. It was really
it
live.
was live.
It was good.
Well, it was
literally live.
Well, it was cool to see like some of them who have been sober for a long time who had never done anything like this before learn that they love doing it. Like even after we did our big one, we had to do a smaller one after because so many people.
And that's the one I went to, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah, we did the smaller one after, and then even after that, they went and did it at like an assisted living place because they just wanted to keep doing it.
Right. Well, no, I mean I love it because you discover things like that are outside your comfort zone.
Oh, yeah.
Like when you're sober, you're like, okay, well, life in general is uncomfortable, but then let's push the boundaries and see what we can do.
I will say one thing though, that was 100% in Jeff Rigdon's comfort zone.
Oh yeah,
like without
He was
a doubt.
natural.
Oh, absolutely
Natural.
Oh yeah, because luckily I have a couple
and
friends.
Cooper too. Yeah,
Cooper was because Cooper's one of the ones that's been to school for it. So he, we had him be Frank Sinatra and he sang, and then
he sings opera and everything else.
Yeah, he was great.
He's
but
amazing.
yeah, so Jeff being one of them, I just fortunately have a few friends who are very witty and so they do well in it's like using their talents for something in a theatrical setting,
Right.
like being very good at like impromptu and like flair and all that kind of stuff. So no, it's very entertaining to like watch. Everyone we had that came, they were like, this was great, because too it's like it's a good show, but it's cool that it's like recovery community, but it's like, so we're having auditions the end of February, and so anybody in recovery is welcome to come audition. And the thing is it's like,
and I want to give the what is it, silverliningsrecovery.org, correct?
Yes.
And it should be below her name if you're watching us on the YouTubes.
I screwed that up.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I put .com. Let me fix it while we're sitting.
Well, it's .org.
Yeah.
And then and then also they can find out more about the organization, right? And
yeah. So we, especially if anyone's interested about organization, about the event that we're doing, anything like that, you can also follow us on Facebook, Silver Lining Sober Living. We post a lot of stuff on there.
Okay. Is that your main format, or Instagram, or is it mainly Facebook?
We use Instagram as well, but the main one is Facebook.
Okay.
We also post it on our website, stuff like that about where it is and the time and stuff. And if anybody, even we have like facilities sponsor it. We even have people who are not in the substance use field sponsor it, stuff like that. Because again, like I said, it's a fundraiser. So it's a fundraiser. We're trying to do something fun, but it still help us be able to provide, like I talked about, those scholarships and any updates in the house.
You're putting the fun in fundraisers.
Exactly. Yes. Yep.
Sorry, that was a dad joke, and I'm not even a dad.
But it is really fun too, because like I've been to a bunch of murder mysteries. My mom, she she had a tea company, you know, Tea and Mystery is what it was called, like where she sold mystery books and she would cater all these little mysteries and stuff. And y'all's was way cooler than that. You know what I mean? And that's my mom. I'm saying that.
Y'all kicked
Shout out Sheila, but theirs was cooler.
Y'all kicked my mom's ass.
Yeah. I was in one of your mom's productions where she was doing a fundraiser for
Nice.
Meals
Really?
on Wheels.
Worlds are colliding.
Yep.
Hey, well, so anything you had to wrap up, or before we get going, because I know these young ladies have to hit lunch.
Well, again, happy birthday, and thank you for supporting harm reduction, because it's not real big here in Texas. And so little by little, with people coming on board, being involved in the industry, opening organizations, and supporting harm reduction, I think we're going to save a lot of lives doing that, as opposed to the traditional way we used to do things. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, bud. And then Chad?
I just want to say how awesome it is to have you guys on the show, but how awesome it is to have somebody else with a gnarly story. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
come on
yeah.
here, because most of the people that come on here, they got stories or whatever, and then.
Well, I was going to say, y'all's story
very
is
similar.
very similar, except the fact that you weren't a cheerleader.
Yeah, well,
That we know of.
that we know
You know
of.
of,
That's
yeah.
I was see. There's that quick wit she was
There
talking
you
about.
go.
But no, it's and it's amazing to see like what you're doing now. And it's all based on it's experience based. You know what I mean? You take and pick and choose from what worked for you and what you didn't like about something, and then you make it your own. And that's recovery evolution at its finest. So I think that's awesome what you guys are doing, and it's like I said, it's awesome to have somebody of the opposite sex that has such a gnarly story on the show, because there's other people you can reach that normal people that got sober can't reach. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's another view that I had. Is I'm like, there's not as many women out there that share some of the same history that I do.
Yeah.
The same gnarliness as I do.
Gnarly.
The same deep, dark demons. Yes.
Well, and then I also like to give the guest at this point a time to shout out to whoever they'd like. So whoever would like to go first.
I was completely unprepared for that. So Lizzie.
Shout out to my dad for the chaos he also put up with.
And the kiddo.
And Landon, yeah, he's. And then what kind of people are we supposed to?
Each other.
Shout out to my mom.
Yeah. Well, and also too, one of the things that I had not experienced before was how authentic the recovery community is.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? And
We'll tell you
I
how
live
it
in
is,
polite
yeah.
society,
For
and
sure.
it's like, oh, really? Wow, you're cheating on your wife? God, I bet she's terrible.
Right.
Because you don't want to. We say the stupidest things,
Right.
right? And Lizzie's told me some of the stuff. You say to them not what they want to hear, but what
Right.
they need to hear.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in polite society, we just kind of, have we
Sure.
don't. And,
boundaries. Yeah. I get
Right.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's I guess just what I'd like to say.
Yeah, I always tell women, I've told women many times, I'm like, I care more about your life than I do your feelings.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
I
For
like
sure.
it. That needs to be a shirt for Silver Linings.
If you
There you go.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you guys coming out, or you young ladies coming out, and that is silverliningsrecovery.org.
Yes, I changed the name tags.
Good job,
I'm so
dude.
sorry.
Good job.
I got one more,
Better
one more
late
thing,
than never.
Kelly.
Well, we'll put the in the description. We'll put the correct.
Yeah, and then
One.
we'll state that I screwed it up.
Yeah, and we'll make sure everybody
admit my part
knows
in this one, so I
anything
don't
that
have to
goes
10 step it
wrong
later.
is Chad's fault.
Yes,
Chad's
Right,
fault. I want to
exactly.
plug Recovery Dharma real quick, too.
Oh, go ahead, dude.
Yeah, I forgot
Yeah.
all about this. Big shout out to the Recovery Dharma Sangha from Dallas and Plano. We got 2 locations, one Sangha, and that's Wednesday at 7, Friday at 7:30, and our Sober Basics community too. Sobar Basics on
Sweet.
Facebook.
Nice. Hey, and then next week we have my good buddy Keith McKenzie. He is a big touring DJ type guy. He's going to be on the show. It's going to be a great story. He's been sober for 6 years now. Obviously, if you're listening to us, follow us on the YouTube. We're also on all other major streaming platforms. Instagram. We're trying to grow that. The Instagram's growing, dude.
Yeah,
But,
and I've
and the
finally
Facebook.
convinced Kelly to start posting stuff on YouTube Shorts.
Well,
it
no,
only took long enough, and then
Well,
within
the thing
2 hours
is
it had 2,000 views.
I could
You
only
got to cross into TikTok.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
No, it actually. Fuck TikTok. But
Yeah.
just do like the little Instagram reels.
That's
Yeah,
what we're doing.
that's what we're
we're
starting to
doing
do.
that.
Yeah.
So the Instagram reels, then I take it
And now he's got
then
a
put
new
it on
phone.
the YouTube shorts. And now I'm not in 2015
He
anymore.
had an iPhone 7.
Now you're
so-
in the future with the rest of us.
Yes.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
We'll be flying Chinese space balloons in no time.
There you go. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody coming out. Hey, and remember, guys, there is no magic pill for sobriety, because if there was, we would all take too many.
Drop the bomb now.
P-E